could trust. For a man who had lived through abandonment, betrayal, and grief, finding someone like Jennifer was a rare gift. Their love blossomed quickly, and soon the couple was expecting a child. Keanu, who had lived much of his adult life in a state of guarded solitude, was finally allowing himself to dream of a family, of stability, of joy. The thought of fatherhood excited him. Friends close to Keanu have said he spoke often of wanting to give his child the love and presence his own father had failed to provide. For once, it seemed like life was offering Keanu something whole, but that dream was shattered in the most devastating way. In December of 1999, just weeks before Jennifer's due date, their daughter, whom they had named Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was stillborn. The loss was unspeakable. For any parent, losing a child is an unimaginable grief. For Keanu, who had already endured abandonment and the death of his best friend, it was another unbearable wound. The tragedy placed an enormous strain on his relationship with Jennifer. Though they loved each other, the grief was overwhelming, and they eventually drifted apart. Yet the bond between them never truly broke. They remained close, tied by their shared pain and the memory of the daughter they had lost. But fate was not finished with its cruelty. On April 2, 2001, Jennifer Syme died in a car accident in Los Angeles. She was only 28 years old. Reports revealed she had attended a party at Marilyn Manson's home and lost control of her car on the drive back. For Keanu, the news was shattering. In just 2 years, he had lost both his child and the woman he loved. Friends and colleagues noted how the tragedies seemed to carve a permanent shadow into Keanu's life. He rarely spoke of Jennifer publicly, but his grief was evident. In interviews years later, when asked about loss, Keanu's words were haunting. Grief changes shape, but it never ends. That simple statement revealed the depth of his pain. He wasn't a man who moved on. He was a man who learned to live with wounds that would never fully heal. Jennifer's death also reinforced Keanu's reputation as one of Hollywood's most solitary stars. Unlike others who sought distraction in fame, parties, or indulgence, Keanu withdrew further into himself. He was often spotted alone, riding the subway, walking the streets of New York, or sitting quietly on park benches. These images sparked countless internet memes of sad Keanu, but behind them was not a joke. It was a man coping with heartbreak the only way he knew how, quietly, privately, and with dignity. Even during the height of his John Wick fame. Years later, fans noticed how the film's themes of grief and vengeance seemed eerily connected to Keanu's real life. In the movies, John Wick is a man devastated by the death of his wife and clinging to the memory of love. For Keanu, it was more than just a role. It was art imitating life, a chance to channel his own sorrow into performance. Through it all, Keanu never turned bitter. Despite carrying unimaginable grief, he became known for his kindness, generosity, and empathy. Stories emerged of him giving up his seat on public transport, buying meals for strangers, and quietly donating millions to children's hospitals and cancer research, charities chosen perhaps because of his sister Kim's battle with leukemia. The tragedies of Jennifer Syme and their daughter Ava remain the deepest wounds of Keanu Reeves's life. They explain so much of who he is today: the quiet sadness in his eyes, the humility in his demeanor, the refusal to indulge in Hollywood's excess. He is a man who has loved deeply, lost profoundly, and carried on with grace. At 60 years old, Keanu Reeves is admired not only for his iconic roles, but for his strength in the face of grief. And yet, behind every smile, there is still the shadow of the family he never got to have. The love story that ended far too soon, and the daughter who never got to take her first breath. As Keanu Reeves turns 60, the world sees him as one of the most beloved figures in Hollywood. To millions, he's not just an actor, He's a symbol of kindness, humility, and quiet resilience. But this reputation wasn't built on fame or fortune. It was forged in the fire of grief and loss. Every tragedy Keanu endured, from childhood abandonment to the deaths of River Phoenix, Jennifer Syme, and his daughter Ava, has shaped him into the man admired today. Unlike many celebrities of his stature, Keanu has always lived modestly. He does not own sprawling mansions or private jets. For years, he preferred a simple apartment, and was famously spotted riding the subway like any other New Yorker. When fans recognized him, they were struck not by arrogance, but by humility. He greeted strangers with warmth, gave up his seat for others, and treated everyday people as equals. This wasn't a performance. It was Keanu being Keanu, a man who never saw himself above anyone else. One of the reasons behind this simplicity is grief. Those who have suffered profound losses often develop a different perspective on life. For Keanu, material things have little meaning compared to love, friendship, and small acts of kindness. His tragedies stripped away illusions of permanence. He knows all too well that the things we hold most dear can vanish in an instant. That knowledge has given him a rare kind of wisdom, one that resonates deeply with fans across the world. Professionally, Keanu's career found a second life with the John Wick franchise. The story of a man mourning his wife and channeling grief into strength struck a chord with audiences, in part because Keanu's own history made the role feel heartbreakingly authentic. He wasn't just acting, he was embodying emotions he had lived through. Viewers sensed the depth behind his performance, and it elevated John Wick into one of the most iconic action heroes of modern cinema. But off-screen, Keanu has remained the same humble man. He quietly donates millions of dollars to children's hospitals and cancer research, never publicizing his generosity. Few people know that he set up a private foundation in honor of his sister Kim, who fought leukemia for a decade. Unlike many stars who use charity for publicity, Keanu avoids the spotlight when giving back. His philosophy is simple: do good, but do it quietly. Even his romantic life reflects his humility. For years after Jennifer Syme's death, Keanu lived alone, avoiding relationships in the public eye. Then, in 2019, he stepped out with Alexandra Grant, an artist he had been friends with for many years. Their relationship surprised fans not because Keanu was in love, but because of how normal and genuine it seemed. Alexandra wasn't a Hollywood starlet or someone chasing fame. She was a grounded, creative soul, much like Keanu himself. Together, they represent a kind of love built not on glamour but on companionship, trust, and shared values. Yet, even in love, Keanu remains shaped by his past. He has admitted in interviews that grief never leaves, it simply changes form. Birthdays, anniversaries, and moments of joy are always tinged with absence. At 60, he carries both the weight of his tragedies and the wisdom they have given him. He doesn't hide from pain, he embraces it as part of the human experience. What makes Keanu Reeves remarkable is not just his survival of tragedy, but his refusal to let it turn him bitter. Many in his position might have collapsed under the weight of grief. But Keanu chose a different path. He transformed heartbreak into empathy, loneliness into kindness, and sorrow into art. He is proof that even the most broken hearts can still offer love to the world. Today, when fans look at Keanu Reeves, they don't just see Neo or John Wick. They see a man who has endured unimaginable pain, yet continues to live with dignity. They see someone who never allowed wealth or fame to corrupt him. Someone who has stayed grounded despite being one of the most recognizable stars on Earth. At 60 years old, Keanu Reeves stands as a reminder of resilience. His story is one of tragedy, yes, but also of quiet triumph. He shows us that while grief may never disappear, it can coexist with kindness, humility, and strength. His life, scarred by loss yet illuminated by compassion, continues to inspire millions across the globe. And so, The tragedy of Keanu Reeves is beyond heartbreaking. But the way he has carried it, with grace, with humility, and with love, makes him one of the rarest souls in Hollywood. Keanu Reeves, the man the world knows as Neo, as John Wick, as one of the kindest souls in Hollywood. A superstar with wealth, fame, and a career most could only dream of. But behind the charming smile and legendary roles lies a story far more tragic than many realize. Because at 60 years old, Keanu's life has been marked not by glamour, but by unthinkable heartbreak, losses so devastating they could have broken anyone else. Yet through it all, Keanu continues to stand tall, carrying pain that few can truly imagine. Today we uncover the heartbreaking tragedies that shaped Keanu Reeves into the man we know today. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. His very beginnings were marked with instability. His father, Samuel Nowlin Reeves Jr., was a Hawaiian of Chinese, English, and Portuguese descent, while his mother, Patricia, was an English costume designer. What should have been a nurturing start quickly turned turbulent. By the time Keanu was just 3 years old, his father abandoned the family, leaving Patricia to raise Keanu and his sister Kim largely on her own. This abandonment created a void that Keanu would quietly carry for the rest of his life. After Samuel's departure, Patricia moved frequently, remarrying several times. These marriages often fell apart, creating an environment of constant disruption. By the time Keanu was a teenager, he had already lived in Lebanon, Australia, New York, and Toronto. For many children, home is a place of safety and stability. For Keanu, it was ever-shifting, never rooted, always temporary. The instability of his family life became the foundation for the quiet, reserved man he would one day become. School did not provide much refuge either. Keanu struggled with dyslexia, a learning disorder that made reading and academics difficult. Teachers often dismissed him as lazy or inattentive, failing to recognize the challenges he faced. The young boy, who had already endured rejection, at home now faced humiliation in the classroom. It is said that Keanu attended 4 different high schools in 5 years, including the Etobicoke School of the Arts in Toronto, where he was eventually expelled. He often felt out of place, misunderstood, and overlooked. But amid these struggles, Keanu found an escape: acting. On stage, he was no longer the boy with dyslexia, the boy whose father had left, the boy who never felt at home. He could become someone else entirely. Acting became his sanctuary, a way to transform pain into expression. He also discovered a love for hockey, excelling as a goalie. Teammates even nicknamed him the Wall for his sharp reflexes. For a while, he dreamed of becoming a professional hockey player. But fate, as it often did in Keanu's life, had other plans. Despite his difficult upbringing, Keanu possessed an unusual resilience. He never spoke bitterly of his father's abandonment, nor of the turbulence of his home life. Instead, he carried himself with quiet acceptance, as though even at a young age he understood that life's hardships could not always be explained or undone. This quiet resilience would define him in later years, as tragedy after tragedy tested his strength. By the time Keanu entered his late teens, he had chosen to pursue acting seriously. He began landing small television roles in Canada, eventually working his way into feature films. His early performances showed glimpses of the charisma and depth that would later captivate audiences around the world. But beneath the surface, the wounds of his early life remained: abandonment, instability, struggles in school. For Keanu, these weren't just childhood experiences, they were lifelong scars. And yet, rather than letting them define him negatively, he turned them into fuel. His quiet demeanor, his empathy, and his refusal to indulge in Hollywood's excesses all trace back to a boy who learned early that life could be cruel and uncertain. In interviews years later, Keanu rarely spoke in detail about his father, Samuel. Reeves spent much of his adult life battling legal troubles, including time in prison for drug offenses. The relationship between father and son never healed. For Keanu, forgiveness may have been possible, but closeness was not. The abandonment remained an open wound, shaping how he approached love, family, and trust. The Keanu Reeves we know today, the humble star who avoids fame's flash and chooses to ride the subway, the man who donates millions quietly to hospitals, the actor who seems almost allergic to arrogance, was born out of this chaotic childhood. His pain shaped his gentleness, his instability built his empathy, and his struggles with dyslexia forged his determination to find another way to express himself. For many celebrities, childhood is a mere footnote to their fame. For Keanu Reeves, it was the foundation of everything, the quiet storm that prepared him for the tragedies yet to come. His story had only just begun, but already heartbreak was its constant companion. Keanu Reeves's journey into Hollywood was anything but smooth, yet by the late 1980s and early 1990s, his persistence had begun to pay off. After leaving behind his chaotic childhood in Toronto, he headed to Los Angeles, a city overflowing with dreamers, but one that would eventually embrace him as one of its most unlikely stars. His first taste of widespread recognition came with the cult hit Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure in 1989. Audiences loved his portrayal of Ted, the lovable slacker with a heart of gold. Though the role branded him as a kind of goofy, typecast actor, it gave Keanu a foothold in the industry. What most people didn't realize at the time was that Keanu, unlike his character, was deeply thoughtful, introverted, and reserved. He was already carrying pain, but he channeled it into his performances with quiet intensity. The 1990s became his era of ascent. Roles in Point Break, 1991, and Speed, 1994, catapulted him into mainstream stardom. Suddenly, Keanu was no longer just a quirky cult favorite. He was an action hero. Then came The Matrix in 1999, which transformed him into a global icon. Neo became more than a role. It was a phenomenon that defined a generation of cinema and etched Keanu's name in the history books. From the outside, it looked like a dream come true. Fame, money, adoration. Keanu had everything. But beneath the surface, the cracks were already showing. Fame, as he would later describe in interviews, felt isolating. The parties, the flashing cameras, the red carpets, they were not things he relished. He was an outsider, uncomfortable with Hollywood's excess. While many actors basked in attention, Keanu often slipped away quietly, avoiding the spotlight as much as possible. Then came a tragedy that would alter him forever: the death of his best friend, River Phoenix. River, the brother of Joaquin Phoenix, was one of Hollywood's brightest young talents. Sensitive, gifted, and charismatic, River and Keanu had forged a deep bond while filming My Own Private Idaho in 1991. Their friendship went beyond Hollywood. They were like brothers. They shared laughs, dreams, and a profound understanding of each other's struggles. But on October 31st, 1993, River Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room nightclub in Los Angeles, dying of a drug overdose at just 23 years old. The loss was sudden, shocking, and deeply traumatic for Keanu. He was devastated. Friends later revealed that Keanu rarely spoke of River's death in public, but the grief lingered silently in him for decades. This tragedy hit Keanu harder than most people realized. River's death was not only the loss of a dear friend, but also a cruel reminder of how fragile life was, something Keanu had already experienced as a child. The event hardened his quiet, reflective nature and added to the aura of sadness that seemed to follow him throughout his life. Even as his career soared, Keanu carried River's memory everywhere he went. In interviews, his words about River were always short but heavy with emotion. "I miss him." There was no need for elaboration. The silence said everything. During this same period, while the world saw him as an action star, Keanu faced other, personal struggles too. His sister Kim was diagnosed with leukemia in the early 1990s. For years, he quietly devoted himself to helping her fight the illness, spending much of his fortune on her care. This act of devotion revealed a side of Keanu the public rarely saw: selfless, compassionate, and fiercely protective of his loved ones. By the late 1990s, Keanu was one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, but his personal life was anything but glamorous. While fans celebrated Neo's triumph in The Matrix, Keanu was quietly mourning the loss of his best friend and living with the uncertainty of his sister's health. He smiled for cameras, gave interviews, and delivered blockbusters. But the weight of grief was always just beneath the surface. Keanu Reeves had reached the height of fame, but tragedy had already left its mark. The boy who had been abandoned by his father, who had struggled through instability and dyslexia, was now a man who had lost his closest friend and was preparing himself for battles he could never have imagined. The cracks in his story were widening, and the deepest heartbreaks were yet to come. By the late 1990s, Keanu Reeves was not just a movie star, he was a global phenomenon. With the blockbuster success of The Matrix, he had cemented his place as one of Hollywood's most bankable actors. Yet, even as his professional life soared to unimaginable heights, his personal life was about to descend into unimaginable tragedy. In 1998, Keanu met Jennifer Syme, a bright artistic woman who worked in the entertainment industry as an assistant and had ambitions of her own in film. Unlike the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, their relationship was built on quiet connection. Jennifer was beautiful, but more importantly, she was gentle, kind, and someone Keanu